Welcome to Evangelicalish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American evangelical church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. Join us for these episodes live on our Evangelicalish YouTube page on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 o'clock Pacific. Let's journey together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Evangelicalish. I'm April.
I'm Paul.
And we have
Jeremy's been raptured, I guess.
Yes. Jeremy is MIA today, but we've got a really awesome guest that we're super excited to talk to. Before we get to her, just want to remind everybody to visit our website, evangelicalish.com. We've got a private community. We've got a private Zoom coming up. I don't remember when the exact date is, but we've talked about it before. But we've got one coming up this month for people that subscribe to our Beast or Antichrist
I think it's in 2 weeks,
level.
isn't it?
Is it in? Yeah, I think it's soon. So to hop on that, it's always a fun time. We just private, not live in front of the world, and we can just get more vulnerable. I mean, we get vulnerable here too, but you know, there's just certain things that without the lights, it's the makeup, all the things. Anyway, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. We would prefer 5 stars, but you can also be honest because we want full authenticity from everybody. And follow us on Instagram. Where else are we? We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Evangelicalish, which is evangelical with an ISH. All the things. Yay. Okay, everybody's here. I want to jump right into the topic for the night because there's
let me just throw this up. Jenny, our wonderful help.
Is next amazing.
Week? She says private Zoom is next week. So
is it really?
You better sign up right away if you want to join us for the private Zoom.
Well, now I feel silly. Hold on. I don't know if
Oh, you're going to check it now? I think Jenny
I trust
knows.
Jenny, but I do trust her.
Jenny.
What is it? Yeah. She is so right. It is March 8th. Our private Zoom is next week, March 8th. So this is the perfect time to join our ish community then, because we'll be doing our private Zoom next Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, same time as the live. So we will not be live like next week because we'll be doing our private one.
There you
Good call. Yes.
Evangelicalish.com.
Yes. But I'm super excited for our guest tonight, and Paul can introduce her, but I know it's just so heavy. My spouse and I just went to a rally to protest all the anti-LGBTQ laws and bills that are being passed currently in Tennessee, but I know it's happening across the country in conservative red states, and it's maddening and infuriating. And I feel like our guest tonight is doing good work for the community. So Paul, you can introduce our guest.
And so Tennessee just passed an anti-drag show law. Is that right?
Yes, but the way that the wording is in the bill is that they are banning anyone who would publicly, quote unquote, impersonate a male or a female, which that just leaves the door wide open for so many things that are not just drag, which, I mean, banning drag, they're claiming that they're banning it to protect children because they have this idea that everything is sexualizing children. But what the reality of this bill is that my spouse, Beecher, who's non-binary, does that mean they can't walk out and be androgynous? Are they, quote unquote, impersonating a gender? Like, what does that do for trans people? What does that do for... I freaking wear men's sweatpants all the time. Am I going to get... And half of my videos, I'm in drag. Am I going to get arrested for that? Like, it's so... There's just a lot of...
Are you allowed to watch Mrs. Doubtfire in Tennessee, or is that like contraband now?
Right. The thing... Well, and also Bill Lee, our governor, they just found an old photo of him, I think from high school, of him in drag. So it's not about the drag. It's just about this culture war, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I could go off on this topic because I was just at a protest tonight, and obviously it's very close to my heart. But I think it's perfect that we have the guest that we do have tonight to talk about this.
It is perfect. And this all stems from what we call the clobber passages of the New Testament that have been translated as a prohibition of homosexuality, of same gender love. But many say that's not what the Bible intended, and it's not what it actually said. And our guest tonight has an interesting movie that has been produced and is about to be distributed. We hope, fingers crossed. Rocky Roggio is the director of 1946, the movie. And Rocky, thanks for being with us tonight. Your movie is coming out at the perfect time to help those who have been convinced that God hates anybody that isn't in some cis hetero ideal union, I guess. But anyway, welcome to the show, and we can jump into what the movie has to say.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome to be here. I love both y'all, so tonight is very special.
We're all fangirling with each other tonight, so that's cool.
It is true.
Yeah, let's start with the premise of the movie, and then we can get into how you got into making it and everything. But this is the idea of 1946 is that the English translations of the Bible did not include the word homosexuality until 1946. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, no version of the Bible used any form of a word homosexual, which is a medical term that derives it's a group of people that have an orientation. And the context of these verses never implied anything like that. And so once the word homosexual was introduced into our modern society, we see the translators just trying to modernize the text. And what we see in the research is the data only says and shows that we can only assume that it was a mistake because we see the translators from this committee who made the mistake rectify it and change it. But the problem is there were 3 other modern English translation committees in the 70s that were producing their version of the English Bible, and they all used this RSV translation as their root text and inserted the word homosexual and then 6 verses where it just doesn't belong. And we see an amplification of a persecution of this group of people by the church because they have an actual weapon in black and white in the Bible to use against the LGBTQ community. And so obviously homophobia has plagued our reality for all of human existence, right? But we see an amplification in the church when the word homosexual was put into the Bible, and the church can say, see, it's not us, it's those dirty, filthy homosexuals. And they start to use it. In the 80s is when we see malice. So again, we can only assume, we might say the translators had a certain malice and they used this word out of to get us, but we don't see that until the moral majority and the Jerry Falwell days really rev up and amp up the homophobia in church through scripture. Prior to that, you would send an LGBTQ person to a medical doctor, right? But once we were declassified through the APA as not having a mental illness, that's when we see the church take hold of the issue and turn it into a moral issue and start to get vocal on it. So we just look at the history of the mistranslation and how it impacts our reality, hence the title of the movie.
April, let me jump in and show the trailer real quick, okay?
Yeah.
And then you can jump in. This is the trailer for the film, which is fantastic. And so let me get it up here and we can check it out.
Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals shall inherit the kingdom of God.
God's given us his word, and to go against that's wrong.
1946 is the first time in any language, in any translation, the word homosexual ends up in the Bible, right?
I found that incredibly hard to believe.
Who made this decision? Why did they make this decision? How did they make this decision?
Here is the famous 1946 RSV New Testament.
I found that they had left their archives at Yale University.
I think we went through 60,000 documents. So I'm reading this for the first time.
Oh, this is exactly what we are looking for.
This is it.
I was wrong, or I think I'm wrong about what the Bible says.
What is in the Bible is a behavior. It's a behavior that heterosexual people do. Religion and politics get together.
There is a religious war going on in this country. It is a cultural war. This war is for the soul of America. Hey, sweetie.
What you're doing is contrary to the Word of God.
The authority of the Bible is at stake. How do we undo a lie that is so ingrained in our culture?
Oof.
Neither fornicators,
Oops, sorry.
nor idolaters,
Stop. There we go.
Have you got a lot of pushback from the more conservative Christians for the film?
Oh yeah. So we've had hundreds, I'm not sure how many, YouTube videos, podcasts, radio shows, newspaper articles. We had someone write a book debunking our movie of a movie they've never seen. People on TikTok and Instagram who you would think would want to affirm the LGBTQ community and want to look at new evidence. So all of a sudden jump to, oh, well, no, this is ridiculous. They're not even giving us a chance, which was really surprising. And then well, the most surprising, which is not really, it's heartbreaking. We've gotten a lot of pushback from not only the conservatives, but LGBTQ people who've been hurt by the church, who think that we shouldn't even be in this space at all. And they've given us a ton of pushback, like, how can you even call yourself Christian? How can you even, you know, who cares about the Bible? You know, all of those things that we hear in our pages all the time. And my response to them is, well, we should care about the Bible because we see how its separation of church and state isn't really a reality anymore. And we need to really pay attention to these things, besides the fact that we're hurting people with bad theology. And as a victim of bad theology, I thought it was important for me to speak out about it. But anyway, yes, we've gotten pushback from all walks, which means that this movie is important. You know, I think that people should see it, whether you're Christian, atheist, whether you've been hurt by the church and you never want to go back to church again, or you fall under another religious category. I believe that this movie will speak to so many different people.
Yeah, I feel like you sent us a link, and so we watched it, and it was so well done. It was very very well paced, and there was a lot of like emotional stories that you shared. One thing that I found so interesting, well, one, your relationship with your dad, because I do feel like what a lot of people don't know, because they haven't seen the movie, is that it's a well-rounded, you don't just present one side, you present both sides, a few different sides of what scripture says about it, which is super fair. And a lot of the more conservative documentaries, Matt Walsh, What is a Woman, don't show both sides at all. It's very propaganda. I would not say that this film is propaganda by any means.
Dr. Michael Brown, just to name another.
Yes. But that you mentioned something just a second ago that I've always struggled with, even when I was deeply evangelical. I remember hearing about people that were LGBTQ affirming, or universalists, or didn't believe in hell, or believed that everybody went to heaven. And I remember being really confused why we wouldn't want there to be no hell. Like, at the end of the day, you know, like, why wouldn't we want queer people to be able to be Christian if we truly love people like we're supposed, like Christ calls us to? Like, if we actually love our neighbor, this is good news. Like, why fight that?
Yeah, I know. You know, and I think that it's just human nature to create another. And as we see in the history, the church being like, see, it's them, it's not us.
Yeah.
And the LGBTQ community is just the next in a long list of others that the church has created. And this is just group mentality. This is just human nature. And it really isn't love thy neighbor, love the church, love God, you know. And if we did just follow those three principles, I think it would, you know, things would be a lot different. But
well, and part of my theory on that is, if you're in a religion that tells you you're innately evil and depraved flesh. You're horrible because you exist because some guy ate a piece of fruit 6,000 years ago.
They
The
blame the
only
woman,
way,
though.
what's that?
I was just gonna say they blame the woman for the fruit.
Well, they blame the woman, but her sin didn't matter because women didn't count, right? So it's Adam's sin that, you know, she enticed him, but the
Right,
point, you know,
totally. But yeah.
yeah,
There's so
yeah,
many
exactly.
flawed ideas in our foundation. And that's one of the things that we've learned in deconstruction. And I will say, though, in making the movie and knowing that our oppressors are most of the time our loved ones, these are our parents, our sisters. And so, as we show in the film, I believe that they're victims of bad theology too. And so the goal as the director of this movie was to really consider not above the LGBTQ community, but really consider the evangelical conservative community, really listen. And I know that I grew up in that world, so I know what they're thinking. I know what they're going to respond to and what they're not going to respond to. And trying to balance that where we're not, this is not an attack on the Bible. This is not an attack on God. This has nothing to do with what I believe, you know, and this isn't, and I don't want anybody to feel like they're drifting out to sea because I just lifted the moor out from underneath them. And so, because if this is wrong, what else is wrong? So I wanted to baby step these ideas with empathy, with compassion, with love, and make it fun and have a journey and relational as we hit the academics, the theology, and the politics and the history.
And the reason it matters, in part, as you said, when people, why are you doing this? Because we have a, you know, Pat Robertson who will say New Orleans is hit with a hurricane because of sin, you know, that 9/11 happened because of gay marriage. You know, these are things people say in this country. And we know from our tradition, for April and I, there is a sense of like, you have to impose Christian law into the civil code of the United States so God won't punish us as a country. So that's one thing. And then just this demonization for political purposes is literally killing people. We literally have queer young, not just queer young people, queer people in general who kill themselves because they're told they're an abomination, that God hates them. And so what you're doing is very important from my vantage point because of those two reasons.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel strongly that we've already made an impact even before the movie was released. And we had some focus groups throughout the year in communities, and we were really able to make an impact in those communities already, which has been wonderful. During COVID, we did Zoom, community Zooms, which I'm thinking of opening up again this year as we're on the festival tour while we're looking for distribution to reconnect with the audience, reconnect, because our stories as we're meeting people, first of all, that's the only way I was able to make the movie, was with a community. This movie was made by all of us, which is incredible. When you all see the movie and you look at the credits at the end, look at all those names at the end of the film, you know, and so but getting out and really, really working to hear from LGBTQ people, from parents, from pastors, from faith leaders, to help change our reality. Even what went down with the Andy Stanley thing a couple weeks ago, and everybody's all on one side. He needs to be all or nothing because, you know, he needs to affirm LGBTQ people, but the parents are like, baby steps, we need to get there, you know, like, how do we work with these groups? How do we move it faster, but give the community the information that they need to be affirming, because we have the data now, because we have more information, we have good information. How do we relay it to the community? So that's kind of what my motivation and my goals are this year as we're working to get the movie out. So
can I jump in real quick, April, and just say, by the way, Kathy Baldock is in the comments here, by the way.
Love her.
The star, the co-star of the movie with Rocky.
Yeah, no, Kathy's the star. It's okay. We can say it.
Actually, I think the old guy from Canada, who I guess has passed away now, the one who found the mistake originally, he was the star. My wife and I both like jumped from our chairs and we were like, that's the guy who found that they had it wrong.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the movie. And the end is actually my favorite. The whole wrap up. I don't want to give any spoilers, but that
Yeah.
we had that ending for over a year. And the movie's gone through so many different edits, as you can imagine, but probably a year and a half was probably the first thing that was like really solid. And I'm like, wow, I love this ending. Hi, Kathy. And you know, we weren't sure, do we end on a pull out, you know, like that's just cinematically, it's like you're leaving the story, you know, there's all these different things. It's like emotionally, is it good for the audience? And I'm like, I love it, keep it, you know.
I
And
love that.
it's my favorite. It wraps up everything so perfectly, and he's just so adorable. The ending had me crying. Oh, yay, somebody who watched the film. And thank you for everybody for your patience. I know it's really confusing why the movie is available. I'm confused myself. We thought that at this point, since we're winning film festivals, we won the audience award, we were most watched at Doc NYC in their 13-year history, that we would have a sale
Wow.
by now. I think, you know, it's a very competitive industry. There's only so many slots. And we've gotten, wow, this movie's great. We don't have
Yeah.
room on our roster right now. And I'm like, "Ugh." So, but that's
Mm.
okay. A no just means there's a yes out there somewhere, and we're gonna find it, and we'll make the movie available as soon as possible for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a timely film too, with everything that's just going on in our country. And Beecher asked if we could have Kathy on as a guest sometime, and I'm 100% down, Kathy. If you'd ever want to come on, just DM us. I wanted to ask you, for people that are unfamiliar with you personally, Rocky, just to tell us a little bit about your background and, you know, obviously the reason why this means so much to you, and like your relationship with your dad, and just tell us a little bit for those that don't know.
Sure. So I am a 45-year-old filmmaker. I have been making movies for over 20 years, and I love storytelling. I never thought I would make a documentary, and I've been working in Los Angeles for about 6 or 7 years to produce a movie. And I had a slate of different films and just wasn't really going anywhere. And I started working. I also do design. I'm a production designer. So I started going back to design, and was working at a design firm when I met a woman who told me she was Christian and she wanted to go to church. So I started going back to church. But rewind, I'm a pastor's kid who always felt there was something off with the religion, with the doctrine that I was presented with. And so I was always labeled as the troublemaker because I would question, right? And then 16 years later, found out I was a lesbian, and my dad read my diary, and I left home, and, you know, all this jazz. And so I've been kind of away from the church for 20 plus years, never went back, never had a reason to go back to church. And when I went back as an adult in a progressive LA environment where I'm welcome as an LGBTQ person, I started to see through the BS pretty quickly. And I'm like, this is still really evangelical. Like, it's all the lights and the smokes and the mirrors. And, you know, and I started to really feel it for a moment. So I really inserted myself in that community. And I took a class, speaking of Andy Stanley, that it was an Andy Stanley course curriculum called Starting Point. And I sat with a group of diverse people and did this book course with this group. And on the second day I came out, on the second week that we had meeting, because they were talking about sin. And I was like, see, this is why I left the church, because what I have, I don't consider sin. Anyway, long story short, that really led me to challenge as an adult. And in that group, there was another guy who started to really get me into looking at the Bible more and looking at breaking down what it really means, and trying to find affirming theology, basically. And so I was intrigued and really started to delve into this. And that's when I first learned about Kathy Boldock. There was somebody in another class that I took on homosexuality in the Bible, and I learned about Malakoi and Arsenokoitai, and then I learned about Kathy Boldock, and I was like, what? And I binged watched Kathy Boldock. And after 40 some years of religious trauma, not really fitting in the church, knowing that I was okay who I was, but never really had the tools to articulate it, And now I met this woman who did all this work. So Kathy's first book is Repairing the Breach Between the LGBTQ Community and the Church. And it's a phenomenal book. And I was just blown away. And so for the first time, I felt hopeful that I could work with the Bible to have a conversation with my non-affirming parents. So that was my motivation, you know, as an LGBTQ person who grew up in the church, who loves to tell stories, who's a filmmaker, who then met Kathy Boldock and living in Los Angeles, and had already said, I want to make a documentary. It was like 3 months earlier. I was like, I'm going to make a documentary on trying to find affirming ground with my non-affirming parents. But I didn't know that Kathy was doing this 1946 work. I didn't find that hook, right? It's like, what's the hook that's going to really get people to be like, oh, I get it. Because we know the Bible's been weaponized against countless groups of people. We've heard these stories before. People believe in their heart LGBTQ people are affirmed. But now we have the evidence. We have letters from Yale University written from the translation committee saying, no, we made a mistake, and they fixed it. And I was like, whoop! And that was enough for me to quit my job. I started buying cameras. I started investing. I started begging my friends to help me. And 4 years later, we raised over $500,000 and put it all in the beautiful movie that you see, which is very expensive, and we're still paying for it. I don't know how we did it. I really don't. Every single time, like, we had a budgetary need, and it seemed like we were not going to meet it. It was like, boom, another donor came out of nowhere because I put a post on Facebook or social media. And I'm talking $25,000 here and there to pay for big bills that we need, because we have big bills, you know, like, so.
Can I just, I thought you were going to say for a second there, every time we had a bill, the Lord provided.
I was going to say the evangelical in me would be like, that's God. That's God getting that movie done.
God did provide.
The Lord's work. Yes.
No, I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to question it. I know that we're doing something right. And you know, I think that the drive that I have, again, it's tangible evidence. It's irrefutable evidence. It's a great story. Kathy and Ed are great characters. And then David, Reverend David's alive. That was enough for me to quit my job. I mean, I literally was in a place where I was just about to, you know, I had gotten out of debt. I had a great job. I was like saving up to buy a house, you know, and I was like, nope, change my mind. I'm going to do this instead.
And it's come out so well. So God has to provide a place for
God
it. God has to
provide, right? Totally.
I want to delve into the premise of the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rocky.
She will.
Yeah.
God will.
She
provide.
will. They will. They will.
Right.
They will. For anybody that isn't familiar, and you've hit this a little bit, and the trailer did, but the premise is that the clobber passages that are used for people to say the Bible is clear that God hates homosexuals, they're not so clear. And we have this word, the two words you're talking about, but they are arsenicoite, I may be pronouncing that correctly or maybe not, are not words that we know really what they mean, because they were sort of made up words by whoever wrote those books. And they were not translated homosexual until the RSV committee, the Revised Standard Version of the Bible Committee, got together in 1946. Did I summarize that well?
Yes.
And so the passages are not about affirming, are not about loving same gender consenting adults coming together and having relationship. It is about sexual domination of one person over another.
Yeah, it's mostly sexual domination over one person over another, and it could be a myriad of things. You know, so a lot of people will say on social media that the word arsenicoite means pedophilia. It does not, but it doesn't exclude abuse of minors. You know, and so that's where the confusion comes in. And I try to have a conversation with people on social media about this, and they get very upset. They get very upset about it because, and I don't blame them, because like it has to mean pedophilia, because it can't be us, you know? And so I understand the reason why somebody would want to grab onto that. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is it could be, it's abuse toward anyone, whether it's woman, child, enslaved person, pederasty was the norm that was going on during the time, but it doesn't translate directly to pedophilia. Another thing that one of our scholars says and likes to point out is the New Revised Standard Version edition does a great job in trying to have the reader ask more questions when they're reading the verse. So they've changed it. They don't say sodomite anymore. They don't say homosexual anymore. They don't say sexual pervert anymore. They say illicit sex, because we know that the word means man better or man bed. So, or men having sex with men, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a homosexual. And that's where the confusion comes in. It's like, what kind of sex are these men having? What was going on during the time period? So again, you have to look at the cultural context, the historical context, and understand what Paul was writing about, what really was going on. And it all has to do with social structure and dominance. And that's what nature means, an unnatural. It had to do with an order, a natural order of the way things are. And so if this is what society deems as appropriate, then it's natural. So it's just.
Yeah. Well, and I thought your Jewish scholar was interesting in the movie that he said, you know, in Jewish scripture, which I don't call Old Testament anymore, I call it Hebrew scripture, Jewish, that lesbian sex is not prohibited. So if this is just a blanket homosexuality is evil, lesbian sex is never prohibited in the Torah.
Correct. And one thing that I really like about what our scholars do is they also provide more questions than answers, which is a really good and healthy way to engage in the text. They're like, there are multiple theories around what's going on here. One theory is, and then they break it down. Another theory is this, but we don't know it's absolute. And to say, if you say you know absolute, you know absolutely what this means, you're not being honest with the text. So I don't know. I think it was a fun little way for us to put that together.
Well, I think it's so important because I understand like the pushback from some queer people who have been so hurt by, you know, the Bible being used as a weapon. Like, I totally get it. But there are still people in the world, there are still people in the closet that have Christian family, that only have Christian community, like very evangelical, very unaffirming. And for those people, and there's still a lot of queer people that have faith and that love Jesus and would consider themselves Christians. And this is a very important thing for them, because there is, like, regardless of if you agree with this interpretation, with like, the fact of the matter is homosexuality was not in the Bible until 1946. That's a fact. But if even if you have issues with the other words or whatever, there's still another interpretation that is just as valid as one that has hurt people for so long. And this gives people the authority to exist in these circles, like, because there is it's a valid interpretation. That was the thing that honestly ended up turning me to be affirming. Was I knew the unaffirming theology, because that was what I was taught from birth, you know, all the way up. It was still in those churches. It's still what I was taught. I knew it backwards and forwards. I knew all the clobber verses, knew it all. But then as I was reading about, there's an affirming theology, and looking at, this word could mean this or this, that. And it was clearly not as clear cut as I was taught, 100%. And even though I was not 100%, this is right or this is right either way, I just felt one day, like, in my spirit, like, you should err on the side of love. Yeah. One of these theologies has killed people. Like, people have taken their own lives. It's harmed people. And one of these interpretations brings liberation and is love. And I just kind of chose to err on the side of love. And then it all just fell into place. And it makes so much more sense now that I made that decision. But like, for me, it wasn't like I had this like divine experience. It was just, you know what? I'm just not going to be a dick anymore.
Right.
And, you know, and And then it was so much better.
Now that's good theology right
Yeah,
there.
just don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Yeah, I love it. That's our next T-shirt.
Well, and if I could jump, piggyback on that, my journey as as a pastor, well, as a human being, was I met gay people, and I'm like, they seem nice, and I'm sorry I ever said they, but it's like, wow, they don't seem so evil, and so I wanted to love people. And so even as I was still struggling with theology, and like, I wouldn't perform a same gender wedding, mostly because I was afraid I would lose tithers from our church, or my staff was afraid of that, really, I should say. But I could see Jesus in the Bible. And whenever people said, oh, look at that group of people who don't deserve God's love and favor, Jesus would say, oh yeah, I'm going to go sit with those people and make you really pissed off. I'm going to go hang out with them and tell you that they are okay and you're not. And religious people would get really pissed off. And so I'm convinced we can argue about what those verses mean, but honestly, I kind of don't give a shit for me personally, because I know that that's who the outcast is in our society, who, if Jesus were in the flesh, would be, okay, I'm going to go over there where they are and not be here with you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, and Jesus hung out with them.
I want to be like him. Yeah.
Jesus sought out the marginalized people. That was who he hung around. And the audacity, I don't know how people modern day evangelicals never vision themselves as the religious leaders that Jesus called out, as the hypocrites, as the people that were not being loving. How do you not see yourself in this text? Because Jesus, I firmly believe Jesus would be standing out with the queer people that these Christians are trying to cast out currently, that before 100%. He would be standing with the Christians casting them out.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had a line in the movie from Dr. Parker that we took out, and she was talking about along the same lines, but not where you envision yourself or realize that you're the bad guy in the story, right? But to look at it in a different way, she always encourages her students to read the text as if you weren't the power figure. So they imagine themselves as the power figure, but they still don't see themselves as the bad guy, right? But she's like, you just imagine yourself as the woman in the crowd just trying to get a piece of bread for the day. If you just imagine yourself as that person, then perhaps you will not continue to use scripture from a position of power that allows you to, use these to put high patriarchal power over other people, basically through your interpretation. I forget about how she said it verbatim, but she's fantastic. All of our scholars are fantastic. We got so lucky. And that was another thing that took a long time. It took us over a year to find Dr. Parker, because we were looking to really amplify other voices, because most of the voices in this space are white, cis, heterosexual men, which there's nothing wrong with that, but we really wanted to amplify some other voices. And so trying to find a Greek New Testament scholar that doesn't fit that mold it was very difficult. And when we interviewed Dr. Parker, I asked her, I was like, why did you decide to not only do New Testament study, but Greek? And she said, my first year in Bible school, all of her professors were white men, and she's a Black woman, right? And the first year they were telling her things like, well, your people don't learn Greek. Oh. And she was like, what?
Oh, wow.
And she was next year she signed up, and she is a fierce lady. And I have mad respect for all of our scholars, and Dr. Parker especially is.
Yeah. She was awesome.
Yeah, so great. But anyway, and then getting to be able to be in her classroom while she was teaching on 1 Corinthians, that was not scripted. That was completely, when I met her, she was like, oh, we're doing 1 Corinthians this year, and we're reading from multiple texts so we can see how it's been translated over time, so I can teach the students the translation history. And I was like, you're joking, right? I almost fell out of my chair. Anyway, those are just some behind the scene moments where it's just like too good to be true,
I
that
I
was
have
such a
one
great
shooting
scene.
question,
Yeah.
and I won't mention that I had a scene hit the cutting room floor in the film, but no offense, no
Yeah.
offense, Rock. Um, so they, Kathy, and what was the other man's name? I can't
Ed.
remember him. They looked at 60,000 documents in the Yale library.
Or more.
How
Yeah.
how did we get video of the moment where they found the document? Was that a
Yeah.
recreation or was that real?
Nope, that was real. So Ed and Kathy were wise enough to, well, they wanted to document things for their own research. So
Gotcha.
they brought a friend with them and he filmed all of that stuff on an iPhone. And it was all cleaned up digitally and audio, like all of it was filmed on an iPhone. And it when I first got that footage, I was like, this is the heart of the movie. This is when we're in the Da Vinci Code mystery in the basement of Yale, and you
Yeah.
feel like you're in a different movie, And I just couldn't believe it when I saw that they made that footage and they had the insight to really document their trip, and they were so excited and you can see it in their faces. So for those who haven't seen the movie, like we break the fourth wall, like the researchers, Ed and Kathy, especially Ed, he was like, okay, so now I have to tell you, and he like turns to the camera and he's just like so excited. And then Kathy's like squealing in the background. I love it. It's so good. I love this movie, by the way. I'm really just so proud and grateful that I had the opportunity to tell this story, as much as, it's been a long, hard road and it's still going. I'm really, really, really proud with the outcome. So
You should be proud because it's very well done. It just presents the argument so clearly with so many different voices, so many different experts, diverse voices too, and you just should definitely be proud. I wanted to ask one of the, I guess, storylines. It's a documentary, but you interview your dad, who's a pastor who is not affirming, as you mentioned, and still
Sal.
isn't.
Sal, yeah.
Yes. So one question is, has he seen the movie?
Oh yeah.
How
Many
did how did he how does he feel about it?
So I first showed my father and my mother and my oldest sister and her husband. It was the four of us. I guess that would be five of us. I would be the fifth, in July. So right when we were at Picture Lock, pretty much when we were getting ready to release, just so that they didn't have any surprises. I also was trying to get permission from my family members to show images of them in the movie. And I only got one family member outside of my dad to agree. So we had to blur out my mother and my sisters. But in July, when everybody watched the movie, at first my mother laughed at the rabbi's joke. I mean, I was like, oh, Mom, and it's a great joke. And then 2 days later, she said that I made a terrible movie and she wanted nothing to do with it. And she was quite hostile. You could tell that she's just got a long way to go in her journey. And that's okay. I didn't push her. My dad, when he saw the movie, he thought it was great. He thought he was represented fairly. He didn't think that any of
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments where I laugh, but I'm not laughing at my dad. I'm laughing at the situation, and it's just ironic, and you can feel that. I'm not being disrespectful. It's just like eye roll because this is here we go again. And it's just one of those moments where you just have to smile, And so I was really grateful that he recognized that and didn't take offense to it. And he's a good sport, On top of that, then we invited him to come to the world premiere, which was in New York City. And he came out to our world premiere. And he was there at our party and he did EPK, so we did a whole interview with the movie poster behind all the main players. And he did an interview about what it was like to be in the movie. I haven't watched that footage yet. I'm not going to lie. It's been like 3 months. I still have no idea what he said. Sometimes it's just better for me to look at it when I'm ready to look at it. But yeah, I'm really grateful that he participated. And so the Rocky Sal storyline wasn't going to be a prominent storyline. I didn't really want to put myself in the movie. It was not about interviewing me. My story is not unique, but we didn't have a Sal voice. So once my dad 100% agreed to be in the movie, we're like, okay, we need to reframe this. And then that storyline took it had that through line that we needed to show an example of a relationship while we're side by side with the research, and really humanize it and show how we, as people who are dealing with someone who is a dogma over data person, how much we hit our heads against the wall.
Yeah.
And so he might not see it that way. And maybe he thinks the same thing. He hits his head against the wall when he talks to me, and so that was very important for us to show that dynamic so that, again, we humanize the story.
Yeah. Well, I think it brings this real authentic human element to it that so many people are dealing with. But like I personally know so many people in the queer community that either don't have relationships with their family, their parents, or it's very strained. And one thing that I wanted to commend you on that I was just repeatedly impressed was just how, like, you could see you really loved your dad and you treated him with so much kindness, even when he was spewing words that were hurtful, like it's that just takes someone really brave to be like, I know you believe these things. I don't, but I can see the humanity in you. And also it did, like, your dad's love for you also came through in this, and it's this weird, confusing dynamic because you're clearly on opposite sides of this issue, and yet the love still came through, which I guess is why we believe in love, right? Because love transcends all things. But I just thought you did a really good job. And I think it shows more to your personal journey that this was the household that you grew up in, that you were taught, that you probably even believed a lot of these things at some point. And then you came out and are now, I would say, doing the Lord's work to make space for queer people in Christian circles. And I just think there's something really powerful in that.
Thank you. I would say that's kind of ironic. I never thought I would ever work in ministry.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to call it, but whatever work this is definitely needed. And I'm happy to fill the space. And, there are so many people who've been doing this work long before us, right? And there are going to be so many more that continue the work. And I'm just excited that I'm now able to be a part of it. I never thought I would make a documentary about the Bible. I mean, and now I'm in it. So I just need to embrace it. And, but I've met so many wonderful people, and I've been a part of so many different wonderful church communities. I met a woman in Wisconsin this week who wanted to become a church sponsor, and we spent some time on the phone, and she's a parent. And it's just lovely to hear people in middle America who care about the movie. You know what I mean? Here's this mom who not only cares about the movie, they did a whole conference at their church. And she's like, okay, so I held a class. There were like 30 women from our community. And she told me what the class was about. I'm just like, you can't beat that. It's kind of exciting. And I hope that it does create real change, especially nowadays, because this election period is really dangerous time for us in America and for the LGBTQ community. We were talking, I think, before we got online about all of the laws, especially like in Nashville, the anti-drag laws, the Don't Say Gay bills that are going nationally, and all these other things that are just really dangerous for our LGBTQ, for us and our friends and family. So yeah, it is timely. We are looking to get distributed. If anybody knows any sales agents or anybody at Netflix or Brandy Carlisle, or
you wonder if you could get it on PureFlix.
Or
I'm just joking. You just imagine, it's a documentary about the Bible.
we did submit to the largest Christian documentary film festival. It might just be like the Christian Film Festival. And we find out this month if we get in. I don't think they're going to let us in, but it was really amazing to apply.
I don't think you can be in a Christian film festival because to be Christian, a movie has to be shitty. So
well, that is true. It is true.
It was just too quality. I do want to echo what April said. It was powerful to see you and your dad sit together. Now, I text you after I watched the movie because I was screaming at Sal through the screen. I was telling Sal what I thought about him, but I thought you guys treated him very, very sweetly and wonderfully. Let him share his story. And I think it's so powerful to see you sitting in the chair. And I think I'm probably misquoting you, but to say, where does that leave me to your dad? I just heard you saying, but can't you just love me? The Bible is keeping you from fully loving me, or something. That's kind of how I translated it. And it's just so human and so powerful.
Yeah, that was a really hard scene. We had to edit around a couple of my very emotional moments where I was getting amplified. And then Sal got really amplified at the end there as well. So we all just stopped rolling the cameras and left. Yeah, it was fine. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. And then what I think for someone who is so wrapped up in their dogma and being challenged, the spinning that day just started to go from one other bad subject to another. You know what I mean? And it was just like, he just really needed to be on the defensive, I think. I don't know, and then I get on the defensive, and it's just really hard. I would say for anybody who watched the movie, it wasn't easy, you could tell. But and I would also say for someone too, I say in the movie, in order to make it be an influence, you have to be in relationship. But another thing we need to understand too is the more that we're in relationship with people who have these opposite views, it can also be harmful to our mental health, and it could be harmful, to our overall health in general, because we can start to get consumed and absorbed with the language that they're using. A lot of these loved ones of ours might be in an echo chamber where they're only listening to one side, and the language then starts to get really familiar, and then they start to use it, and then it's like, oh, well, that sounds convincing, and it just so easy to kind of, I don't know. It just, for me, I need to take breaks. I would say,
Grace doesn't mean you can't have boundaries.
Grace doesn't mean you can't have boundaries, and you have to make sure that, you show up, but you make space for yourself, and you have other people to talk to. And, yes, thank you for helping me.
I want to show this. You guys got Mary Lambert to help you on the film, and she's famous for a couple of songs, Secrets and Wearing Mom Jeans. I know was one of her songs. But she is helping you guys, and I want to play this because we want people to be able to help you. You still need some financial help for the film, and so I want to show your video on your GoFundMe page here. If I can do that here. There it is. Okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm Mary Lambert. I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and I'm also part of the Christian community. We made so much progress in this country, but we're still fighting for love, inclusion, and equality in our homes and our churches. In many Christian churches, we're still being told that being gay is a sin and that we're unworthy of God's love. So I couldn't be more passionate about this life-changing project that's seeking to set the record straight. The first time that the word homosexual entered the Bible was 1946, when the RSV translation team erroneously combined two independent words, and it resulted in a historical and current condemnation of a group of people. Two consenting adults that love each other is not a sin, but many Christians still believe that.
Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals shall inherit the kingdom of God.
I went into this research wanting the answer no matter what it revealed. If God said, you are such a horrible abomination that I needed to rid this planet of myself, I was willing to do that because I love God that much. But when I dug in, that's not what I found.
We didn't know what we were going to find when we dug into the RSV notes.
It was a letter written by a 21-year-old seminary student to the translation team saying, hey, I think you chose the wrong word when you put the word homosexual in here.
He says, I write this after many months of serious thought and hard work to point out that which to me is a serious weakness in translation. Misinformed and misguided people may use the RSV translation of 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10 as a sacred weapon. He wrote the letter as David S.
We found him and he's still alive?
So I wrote a letter, and to my amazement, I got a reply back about 3 weeks later. I received your letter, and there may be something to what you say.
The domino had already fallen, and that word followed through to all the other mainline translations that we have today. I started weeping because I was thinking about all the damage that had been done over the last 60 years.
The lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic.
The Bible condemns homosexuality as a sin.
Why did they put the word homosexual into the Bible? What were they thinking?
The church is doubling down on this issue because they've so politicized it. We're going to do the work to make this thing right.
This shows that there was a mistake, and it's an honest mistake, and we have an opportunity to change it.
I believe love will win. I believe that we will be living in a time where we won't even have to talk about this, right? It won't even be a matter of an issue, but those who have the power to do something about it right now ought to.
Please help us finish this movie so we can spread the truth and create this powerful tool for love and justice. It will save lives.
Oh, it's so good.
Mary's awesome. Her music is
Well-
so good in the film. Yeah.
Where can people find the GoFundMe to donate? If you send us the link, we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Okay, that'd be great. 1946themovie.com has all of our information. If you just go to our website, people can donate through the GoFundMe. They can buy merchandise, and they can also give through Women Make Movies, which is a tax deduction. And money right now will go towards licensing fees, insurance, travel, and operation costs right now as we're working to get distribution. So it still is a mad hustle every single day to be emailing people, going out into the field to meet people in the community at these film festivals, to meet distributors. And the reason why we need a distribution deal is to help pay for the bigger bills like the insurance and the licensing fees. We also have producers that haven't been paid. It would be wonderful to pay them. If they don't get paid, that's fine. But that's what hopefully a Netflix deal or something like that would do. But more importantly, distribution will afford us global recognition. It'll help us get the movie marketed. PR and marketing is another huge line item that we just don't have the budget for. And so if we get picked up on a network, they're going to pay for all of that stuff, and we're going to get the movie seen by more eyes across the world quicker. Otherwise, it's just going to be a long, like, word of mouth type of thing, which is fine. We'll go that route if we have to. We'll figure out a way to get the movie available this year. So just be patient with us and know that that's why we're waiting for certain things. There's just a method to the madness, you know. We just can't put it out on YouTube. Another reason we can't just put it out, we won't be able to participate in these film festivals. If we just put the movie on any VOD, if we put it on Vimeo or YouTube, we will be disqualified, which means no international premiere, which is huge for us to meet distributors and education impact producers over in the UK and over in Africa and over in Australia and all these other places. So just be patient with us. That's the answer. As you can imagine, people ask every day. They're like, "Why isn't this available?" I'm like, "We're trying."
Well, and people that don't work in film don't realize how much goes into making one movie and how many people are involved and how many moving parts there are and how much money it takes. It's so much.
The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. My producing partner, Jenna, and I are talking about making another movie, and I have waves. I'm like, I can't wait to do another movie. And then today I woke up and there's like so much work, and I'm like, what the heck are you thinking? I never will make another movie again in my life. Oh my gosh. Do this all over again.
Yeah. It becomes your baby though, doesn't it? I can imagine you went to sleep thinking about the movie, woke up thinking about the movie. That's the creative process, right?
Totally.
1946themovie.com is the website, and you can find the GoFundMe there. So go give them money. We heartily endorse the movie, how good it is, and how it needs to be out in this season, because I hear it every day from somebody. Oh, 1 Corinthians 6 or 1 Timothy 1. And the amazing thing is they totally ignore all the other behaviors listed in those passages. You never hear anybody say, oh, we need to find out whether you cheat on your taxes or not before you can be on the board or be in our children's ministry. But besides the point, we just need to break through this idea that the Bible can be used for hate and hatred and marginalization of people, because there's about 2,000 commands that say don't do that. And so I think it's really important. So send them money. Send them money.
To quote Dr. Cheryl Anderson, what her takeaway from watching the movie would be is to learn that the Bible doesn't have to hurt.
I like that. Yeah.
It
doesn't have
meant
to.
Yeah. Anyway.
You don't have to use it as a weapon.
You don't.
You don't have to be a dick.
Right. You don't have to.
God does not command you to be an asshole. It's just the way it is. All right. We have a closing segment, April, right?
Yes. So we just thought, just for something fun, that we would say, what is our favorite? Is it our favorite either movie or TV series?
Yeah.
Something that we weren't allowed or just wouldn't watch when we were evangelical that we enjoy now. So who wants to? Rocky, you want to go first?
So I didn't understand the assignment, but I still am close. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Something that I wasn't allowed to watch when I was evangelical-ish, but I still did anyway because I was that kid. Right.
Okay.
Married with Children. All the time.
Oh.
All the time. And of course, we weren't allowed to watch that.
Of course not. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's a good one.
Totally.
That's a good one.
Paul, what about you?
Well, it's kind of along the same lines with Rocky. Saturday Night Live. We were not allowed to watch Saturday Night Live. So I had to, like when I got to have a sleepover with a friend or something, I could watch Saturday Night Live and sneak it in there. And then as an adult, like anything that's on streaming now, we would never have been allowed to watch in our house, because if somebody said, God damn it, we had to turn off the TV.
Or if there's
and
a
I
nipple.
remember, I remember when my wife and I started watching House of Cards, and you know how this works. Like, I was like, oh, I shouldn't be watching this. This is evil. And there were sometimes I watched the show in the early seasons where I was like, I need to take a shower after watching this thing.
Hold on. Hold that. Go ahead. I'm listening.
But with that, but I was able then to realize, oh my gosh, you're kidding. Look at this.
Ooh, she's got a House of Cards.
Yeah,
art.
This is print number 106 at 190. And this was made by the showrunner of House of Cards. So that's Robin and Kevin. So this was my gift as a crew member, season 2, House of Cards.
Hey, look at you. That's awesome.
Oh, did you work on House of Cards?
Yes,
Kathy is saying in her. Oh,
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Yeah. So
Well, we're not allowed to watch it anymore because of Kevin Spacey, I guess. But the first 2 seasons of that show, and again, I felt like I was going to hell for watching it. But man, they were so great. Season 6 was an absolute. It didn't get me too much. Sorry to say, Rocky, but those first 2 seasons were great.
I left
great
after
theater.
season 2. As soon as
good.
when Fincher left, I was out of there. I was like, this
Okay.
show's going to go downhill from here.
And it
Okay,
did.
good. Season 6 was total shit. Don't watch it. It was awful.
I thought you were done. I wouldn't have gotten up in the middle of your thought. I apologize.
No, that's great. That's great. But yes, House of Cards, and pretty much any other streaming series now, I would never have been able to watch in my household of my childhood.
Oh, nice. So for me, mine's a little bit like Rocky in that I still kind of watched it, but I didn't tell anyone really. And I waited until I was married. So it's just Game of Thrones because I love fantasy movies. Like Lord of the Rings are my favorite movies, and I just love the fantasy world. So, and I'd heard so many great things about Game of Thrones, but basically all the Christians were like, it's porn. But it's so much more than that. But we talked about this on our personal non-binary marriage podcast, so I can share it because it's out there. But me and Beecher, when we first got married, we started streaming. I think like 4 seasons were out at the time, so we started binge watching it. But we would watch it naked, and anytime that like a nude scene would come on, we would just look at each other. how cringy is like. So the thing that we don't do now is if nudity comes on the screen, we can just be clothed and be normal and not weird about it. So
wait. So to avoid seeing nudity on the screen, you looked at each other because you're allowed to see each other naked.
We were like newlyweds too. So we called it Naked Thrones. So we were like, you want to do Naked Thrones? Like, yeah, we'll do Naked Thrones. So that was like we'd watch Game of Thrones naked, and I don't know, it was like in our way. I don't think I was actually personally bothered by the nudity, but in my head I was like, oh, if Christians found out we watched the show, then I'd be like, oh, but on the naked scenes we look at each other. But we never told anyone anyway, because it was, I know it feels so cringy saying it, but it's true. It was our life. So
that is amazing. That's funny. And now you're doing vibrator ads.
That's true. I did do a vibrator ad this last week. So come a long way. Come.
If my kids were on this show right now, they would be screaming Harry Potter, that we didn't allow them to watch Harry Potter. And I didn't know if it was good, bad, or otherwise, but it was just kind of like, well, maybe we ought to err on the side of caution, and we didn't. So we didn't let our kids watch Harry Potter, and they never let us forget it now.
Harry Potter was the same for me. I watched that in college. Wasn't allowed to either. But the Hunger Games, though, our daughter was reading through those books in like 5th, 6th grade, and I remember reading some with her at night, thinking, "Is this okay? Like, is this all right? Is my daughter going to go to hell for reading this?" So we all had our moments of religion that made us. Kathy in the comments said she's watched Game of Thrones fully clothed. How dull.
Kathy, you can spice up your life out there in the snow wilderness.
Yeah. Anyway, Rocky, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Can you, I know you told us where to see the film, but where can people find you on social media too, if they want to follow you?
At 1946 the movie across all social media platforms. And then 1946themovie.com will take you to the website. We're going to do some updates this week on the website to try to get a little bit more information on there. So, and in our linked tree actually is a great place on all our socials to get information. So I just put in there responses to your questions, for example, because people ask us so many questions. So I just answered our top 6 and I put it in there so that if you have a question, maybe it's a frequently asked question, so linked tree will give you some resources. At 1946 the movie, you can find us on socials. And thank you for the support. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, everyone go support the movie when it's available. Watch it. If it's in a film festival near you, go see it.
Last thing, right? Yeah. We have 3 film festivals coming up in March. So we're going to be in London on the 17th and 18th at BFI Flair. All of this will be linked in our linked tree. Then we are going to Cleveland International Film Festival. We're going to play in Cleveland on the 30th of March.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Correct. We are going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, and we already won the Dreammaker Award. They're giving me the Dreammaker Award this year.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yep. And so, and in Cleveland, if you live in the Midwest, we're going to open up virtual tickets. So there's only going to be 500 virtual tickets in the Midwest coming up soon. So stay tuned for that if you want to get on the list. And then we're going to Salem, Massachusetts. We'll be there Sunday, the 26th in Salem. And they will also have a limited virtual release. So we're going to do little limited virtual releases in the little local areas. And then again, I'm going to try to travel to every single area to meet as many people as we can, start working on this grassroots impact campaign through distribution. But anyway, it'll all be on our website.
Awesome.
Well, bad news, Rocky. You are in ministry, and I know this two ways. One, you're not making any money and you're fundraising. So that's one indication you're in ministry. And two is you've done something very powerful that's going to impact people's lives and even save lives. And so we just honor you for that and are excited to be your friend and so happy we got to have this conversation with you tonight.
Thank you. Y'all are awesome. I got to meet you, Paul, in person. April, I hope I get to do that one day very soon.
I would love that.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much for having me and getting me out of my shell. It's hard sometimes to do these things. As you can imagine, I feel for 4 years and just spinning my wheels. And now we're trying to get distributed. So every single day, just trying to stay motivated is really hard. But thank you for encouraging me tonight. I really appreciate it.
No, you're awesome. Keep up the Lord's work that you're doing.
And may the Lord provide a distributor.
Yes.
All right, Jeremy, we missed you tonight.
Oh, yes, Jeremy.
Yes. Missed you. Y'all. We will not be on a live next week. We'll have our private Zoom. So go to evangelicalish.com if you want to join us. And we'll see y'all in a couple weeks.